Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking, and today I'm going to do a video of getting to know me. Kind of like my background, my life story, I guess, in a way. So it's going to be a little bit long. If you're not really into this kind of video, then you can go watch plenty of my other videos, and I will have a lot more coming up. I'm going to try to be a lot better about recording these and trying to do twice a week. Because there's so many ideas that I have, and I really enjoy like these talky videos where it's just like me talking to you or me telling you a story or something like that. I love watching them, and I really would like to start doing them because I feel like it's a more personal level where you can understand what I've been through or what has happened, whether it be crazy stories or whatever. And I think that would kind of help me like document kind of my life in a way, but also like give you guys something to enjoy watching. I don't get into anything crazy, but especially like these days, but my life was wild not too long ago. So I guess like we can just start at the beginning. Born in Las Vegas, Nevada. I am currently 26 years old. I am a Scorpio. My name is Bone, so that's how I got Captain Bone. You can go ahead and call me whatever you want. Honestly, I don't care. When I was growing up, I had an older brother and an older sister. They were far older than me. My brother was 9 years older than me. My sister was 10. So growing up, I was kind of, raised almost as like an only child, because by the time that I was 8 or 9, they were getting ready to leave. So, I mean, it wasn't all that bad, but I was adopted. So I do have an adoptive mom, and I have my birth mother, so I do know them both, so that's really pretty awesome because it's not something that happens very often with children who are adopted, especially when they're adopted as babies like I was. But my family is my family regardless, so there's that. I've been through quite a lot. Like when I was growing up, I was always very overweight. I was always very overweight, and I was always the bigger kid. I was always the tallest one. I was always the biggest one. By the time that I was 13, 14, I was actually, I think it was 320 pounds at the time, and I was also 5'8". So I was a big girl. Like, I mean, you didn't really see it, but because my weight was all over, but I was a big girl. And I struggled with that a lot. It's still something I struggle with, but not as bad as I was. So at 14, I did get gastric bypass surgery. At the time, gastric bypass was very new. It wasn't anything that they really did too much on adults. It was a new procedure being, kind of going through the works. And they especially didn't really do it on kids, but luckily I was one of the few that this particular doctor out in California wanted to start doing on, younger kids that were under 16 because of childhood obesity. So I was one of the lucky few. So I went over to California. That's where the doctor was. That's where I had the surgery. And I would love to say that it went great, but it didn't. So he ended up leaving a 3-inch long needle inside of my stomach, and it ended up poking a bunch of holes out through my intestine. Now, the next day, because I was complaining of pain, they ended up going through and finding the needle and pulling it out. But then after that, I was still leaking, is what they call. So I was still leaking. I had drain tubes in me. We were going back and forth between the doctors. I want to say for probably about, it's so hazy because of all the surgeries that I went through. But I want to say about 2 weeks or so, maybe a little bit more, maybe about a month. So we were going back and forth with this guy. And then on the way home, because we would drive out there, on the way home we were driving back, I had a lot of pain. I didn't really feel good. I remember laying in the back seat and just being in so much pain. That night, I tried to get through that night, but I was just like, listen, I think I need to go to the hospital. I'm in a lot of pain. I don't feel good. Something's wrong. So we went to one of the ERs here in Vegas, and they were like, oh my God, she has 9 abscesses in her stomach. She is malnourished. She's dehydrated. And we need to get her fixed now. Like, my lungs were collapsed. And at that time I was still very bloated from the surgery and, from healing. They couldn't find any of my veins, probably because of the dehydration and the malnourishment. When I left the doctor in California, I had a feeding tube, so I wasn't allowed to eat through my mouth. I had a feeding tube, and I tried to get, he suggested for me to be fed when I was hungry, but honestly, I think it should have been more on a like regulated schedule. But that's, like I said, it was a mess. The whole thing was a mess. So from there, they rushed me into the ER. They couldn't, there's a lot of doctors that didn't want to work on me because I did have gastric bypass. But luckily there was someone who was familiar with it here, so they came in, they did the surgery to, that night they cut me from ribs to pelvis. So I have like, big scar. They cut me from ribs to pelvis to try to clean up my insides because I was practically dying right there on the table. And it was kind of a mess. So they cleaned up what they could. They got me in stable condition. The next day I went in again for them to, I guess, double check everything, clean up whatever was left. I ended up losing my appendix during that surgery. I lost, actually I don't think I lost any. I think the appendix were the main thing that came out. But they stitched me back up. They got me better. I was on a ventilator for about a month. And that was to try to get all the fluid out of my lungs. So I was on a ventilator for a month, but I was under such heavy, medication, so I wouldn't remember exactly what happened. And it was weird, it was kind of a huge clusterfuck, if I can say. But I remember being in the hospital, and when I was finally able to get up and walk around, it was really hard to do so, because when you have such a massive cut like that, you can't use your muscles. So turning over or getting up, it all requires your abdominal muscles, and I couldn't really do it very well without it being, in so much pain. So I did have to get help and, getting up and going to the bathroom or, walking around trying to get better. And I think it took maybe, I want to say about 2 weeks. And I usually use this timeline after I woke up, because obviously when I was on the ventilator, I don't remember anything. I would wake up and then I'd say something or try to write something down because I couldn't speak. I had a big mouthpiece in. And then I'd go back to sleep. So I don't feel like I was awake during that time, but once I woke up after they took me off the medication, then I felt, that's kind of when I remember the most. So that was interesting. I was in peds ICU for, I want to say about a month and a half, because it was, probably. I don't exactly remember, and that's where my timeline gets a little fuzzy, because it's, first of all, it's so long ago, and second of all, it's, I don't remember much because of everything that has happened. And so I remember getting out, still wasn't able to eat or drink from my mouth, so I did have a feeding tube again, except this time I had to carry a machine with me everywhere to feed me. So it was kind of on an IV pole, so I'd, walk around with it, and I'd have to sleep with it, and I'd have to do whatever I needed to with this machine on pretty much all the time, because I needed to get these calories in to make me feel better, to heal. So that kind of sucked. And then after that, I was on a feeding tube for, I remember, until Thanksgiving of that year. So my surgery was initially in July. The very first gastric bypass surgery was in July. And then in November, I think it was the week of Thanksgiving. And the only reason I remember that is because I at first was so bummed out that I wasn't going to be able to eat Thanksgiving. But then when they finally took my feeding tube out and I was able to eat normally, that was the best. So I do remember that. And I had tubes everywhere. I had a feeding tube here, I had drain tubes, and they all got pulled out. And that is the worst kind of feeling when you have a drain or something inside of you. I don't know, people with implants, because they have to get drains put in too, can probably tell you how badly that sucks, because they tell you to relax, and then they're like, okay, don't tense up, yank, and they're pulling this long tube out of you, and you're like, oh, this is a weird feeling. That's what I would equate to someone pulling your intestines out. It's weird. It's a weird feeling. I don't know how to describe it, because all you want to do is tense up and like tense your muscles. But if you do that, it's going to latch onto the tube and it's not going to be able to, you know, come out. So you're like, "Urgh." It's weird. It's weird. It's terrible. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. It's, ugh, ugh. Just thinking about it, it's gross. So when I was on my feeding tube, there was this funny story that happened because my brother's like very, very squeamish about things. So it was him and my parents, I think, had gone out for the night, and it was me, him, and then my friend, and we were all like hanging out, you know, whatever. But at the time they had me taking creatine to rebuild my muscle strength back up because I was pretty much a vegetable in bed for like a month. And I did lose a lot of muscle mass, and I ended up going from 5'8" to 5'6". So I don't know if that was like weight related or if it was just like me shrinking or whatever happened. But there was this funny story where he was watching me and I was taking creatine, and the only way that I could take creatine was through a syringe that would have to be, you know, pushed through my feeding tube. The problem with creatine is that when you mix it with water, it solidifies almost. And trying to push it through the tube, it ended up being like concrete. So when you take solid creatine and try to push it through something, if it's not mixed correctly, if you're not like, you know, gyrating it the entire time, it gets stuck. It's like a concrete block. And anytime that it got stuck, we'd have to pretty much like unclog the feeding tube. Grossest thing ever. So he was trying to give me my creatine for the evening, and it got clogged. So he kind of like started freaking out a little bit, but not really. So I was like, okay, well, it's not a big deal. So what we have to do is we have to get pretty much a long pipe cleaner, if you will, kind of tube to unclog the feeding tube. And I think about it because it was just so funny. And the situation ended up making it worse. So he's like trying to help me unclog it. He's getting grossed out because he's like shoving something pretty much into me. Like he's shoving it in, and then all of a sudden it finally comes loose, but then like food starts coming back out. And as soon as it comes out, he's like, oh God, what is that? What is that? And me and my friend just start laughing. And because I start laughing, it's like squirting all over the place on the counter and in the kitchen. And so I have to stand over the sink holding my feeding tube so it can drain into the sink while I'm laughing. He was freaking out. He was like running back and forth screaming. He's like, oh God, Bo, what is that? Oh my God. He almost threw up, and it was the best thing that ever happened, and I would love to see that again. Like I would love to just replay that whole scenario again because it was fantastic. The way he freaked out was just A+. I loved it. Anyway, so that happened, and I finally got better, and I ended up losing weight like really, really quick. When you lose weight that fast, especially anyone that can tell you that has gone through any kind of like gastric bypass surgery, that it's kind of rough because you have like this weird in between where you're not exactly big enough for your old clothes, but you're not small enough to really fit into new clothes, or you can, but then you buy new clothes, and then within two weeks or a month, you don't fit into them anymore. They're sagging on you. So it's just like this weird kind of in between. And now like my waist has fluctuated so much ever since then, and well, there is a story behind that. There is a reason. So when I had the cleanup after my abscesses, what they originally did was they cut my stomach and then connected it down to my esophagus. And then whatever was left of my old stomach, they pushed to the side as an emergency stomach. And that's what I was being fed through. They couldn't feed me this way, so they fed me through my old stomach, which was still connected to my intestine. So it still functions. Technically, I have two stomachs, but the old stomach originally had a ring on it to keep it small. Well, because it got infected with the abscesses, they cut the ring off. So now my stomach now can expand or contract depending on my eating habits. So that kind of sucks because it keeps me in this weird, like, wavy balance of, well, I lose weight, I gain weight, I lose weight, I gain weight. And that's been like the struggle ever since then. But when I initially went down, I got down to probably, I think, 180 some odd pounds. And then ever since then, it's been like fluctuating. So I guess I kind of started this off as a life story, but it ended up being a surgery story for whatever reason. But it is something that happened, and I feel like it's important to know because there's a lot of people that are getting gastric bypass, or they're getting the sleeve, or they're getting whatever kind of procedures done to help reduce the size of their stomach, ultimately to lose weight. And I think it's a beautiful surgery. I absolutely do. Everyone that has ever gone into it, anyone that has thrived because of it, like, I do not think it's cowardly at all. And this is coming from someone that got it and has suffered from it and has had consequences from it. But in in lieu of everything, when it comes down to it, it's a very beautiful process when it's done correctly. And I think now a lot of people have more advantage of it because doctors are aware and they try to take the precautionary measures. So you can't just go in, get a small stomach, and then go out and have your old habits again, because when you do that and you have that mind frame, you end up not losing anything, or you end up going back into being obese. And it has happened. It's something that is, people need to be aware of when they go into it. So doctors have been getting a lot better where it's like, okay, well, you can get this surgery, but you have to lose X amount of weight and get on this, proper diet before you can do it to get healthy enough for the surgery, first of all, so there's no risk, or little, a lower amount of risk. So you have to be healthy first and get on this very, strict diet plan, and then you can get the procedure. And then afterwards they have, I think, checkups, I want to say every 2 weeks or something, to see how you're going and how much weight you're losing, if you're eating correctly. And they also have support groups. So there's so much out there that wasn't there when I had it. And I wish that I could have done it in a later time, but at the same time, it built me up and it made me who I am today. So, it's really important for me to share my story about what happened, because it's something that I don't want people to be afraid of. I don't want them to be scared of. And I think that there's a lot of, I personally believe that there's a lot of stigma around getting any kind of weight loss surgery if you are overweight, because people are like, well, why don't you just diet and exercise? Well, why don't you just do this? Well, why don't you just do that? And it's like, bro, I've tried, and I know I'm not the only person to say that. Sometimes crash diets aren't good. They're not healthy. And sometimes you just need that start. So it's not a way out, it's a way in. It's a way into life again, where you can experience life as a normal person. There are a lot of things that come with it. You're gonna have extra skin, especially if you're very obese. You're gonna have extra skin. I have it right now. It's what it is. You're gonna have extra skin around your arms, your legs, your belly. And of course, if you get small enough and if there's, a lot of skin, you can get it taken off. I mean, it's not like anyone wants to go into surgery again, but if that's your ultimate goal, if you can do it, then heck yeah. If you can get to the point where you have a small body, or even an average size body, and you're happy, and you have excess skin that you want to get rid of, fucking do it. Do you. I don't fuck people, and it's aggravating to me sometimes, because people don't understand, that it's not just dieting and exercising. Sometimes food is a vice for people, and it's not like they don't want to be healthy. It's just maybe they're not in a very healthy environment. Maybe they don't have supportive family or very supportive, relationships with, their spouse. And maybe that's a lot of the cause. It's not our story. It's not for us to butt in and tell people what to do. Like, fuck off. Anyway, I'm getting off topic and this is getting a little ranty, but that's just how I roll. I get off topic and I rant. And I talk about things that I didn't necessarily originally meant to talk about. Whatever happens. Anyway, so and from that story, I did have a few other surgeries that happened. And I don't think that they were connected at all. I did have a few procedures done where they had to go in and, you know, check to make sure that everything was fine. But then another big one that happened was I got a tumor out of nowhere. A tumor, and it was a very rare form of tumor, something that only happens in either young kids or something that either happens in old people. And I was one of the first, like, teenagers to get it. At the time, I think I was 17 when it happened. No, I think I was 16. I want to say I was 16. So I was about 16 when we found out that I had it. 16, 17, I want to say 16. But I had a tumor the size of a grapefruit connected to my bowel. And once again, it was one of those things where I was complaining of pain. And, you know, I'm the kind of person where I don't complain of pain unless I'm really, really in pain. Like, if you hear me, you know, kind of be like, oh, you know, I don't feel good, I'm in a lot of pain, you know, then something's wrong. Like, I do not feel good because I have the highest pain tolerance of anyone that you've ever seen, except for, like, those weird people that, like, put, like, you know, those hook people where they just, like, hook themselves and, no thanks. Or they, like, put, like, anyway, that's so gross. I can't do that. That stuff weirds me out. Anyway, but as far as this kind of pain, like, as far as, oh wow, I'm repeating myself a lot, I'm so sorry, but I have a very high pain tolerance. So we went into the doctor and we got a CAT scan, I think, first, or did that, maybe that didn't even happen. So we went into the doctor because I was complaining of pain. This is what happened. We went into my surgeon and he's like, oh, you know, Tabby's having a lot of pain. And he's like, you know, it's probably just, there's, adhesions is what it's called. So that's when the scar tissue connects, like, from the skin or from the muscle, it connects onto organs, kind of like spider webs. So the scar tissue will connect to organs and kind of pull them closer. So, like, your bowels are much closer to your muscles than they need to be, or they're getting pulled, or something along the lines of that, where the scar tissue stretches out like spider webs, and it can cause a lot of pain. So that's what he originally thought. He's like, all right, not a big deal. We can go in and do laparoscopically and cut them, and you'll be fine. So we ended up going in. That's how the procedure started. Then he's like, well, apparently what had happened was, while I was under for just getting adhesions cut off, he found a tumor connected to my bowel. So apparently the pain wasn't coming from the adhesions, it was coming from a tumor. And that's when I got cut open again. He had to go in and cut off 7 inches of my bowel because it was connected to the bowel. It was, like, on there. And it was the size of a grapefruit is what he told us. So it was crazy because out of nowhere I just had a tumor for no reason. So he cut my bowel, did a resection, and then took it off, closed me back up. At the time when the surgery happened, I had a scar that was probably about that thick. When he was done, he made it a lot thinner. He made it very, like, thin. He, you know, that was like, he's like, oh, well, you know, while I was in there, so I got your adhesions taken care of, and I made your scar smaller, so, you know, you'll be appreciative of that. And you also had a tumor. Oh yeah, you're missing some of your bowel too. So you can't leave here until you poop. What? What? Excuse me? Oh, that was a mess. That was a mess. So, once again, we had mystery diagnosis bone, so it was a very interesting time. So that tumor actually had to be sent out to the Air Force Base for them to try to figure out what it was. and because I guess no labs here could figure out what exactly it was, so they had to send it out over to the Air Force Base, some kind of medical whatever it was. They finally diagnosed what it was, and they came back to us. It was benign, luckily, but they said it can grow back even if there's a single little bit left. So for the first, I got, I think every 2 weeks at first, I got CAT scans. So then if it didn't show up for a month or 2 months, no, I think it was a month. If it didn't show up for a month, then we would do it every monthly. So then every month, if it didn't show up for 3 months, then we would do it every 3 months. So I was getting a lot of CAT scans to the point where I had conversations with a CAT scan lady. She's like, "Oh, you're in again? Like, I can't believe to see you." I'm like, "I know, it's the weirdest thing." So anyway, but that's kind of the whole story wrapped up. Ever since then, I've been good. It's getting a little bit long now, so I think I want to wrap it up here. This turned into a surgery story time, and it's all over the place. I'm so sorry. But I hope you kind of enjoyed connecting with me a little bit better. If you want to hear more like stories of things that have happened, because I think I have a lot of them, then let me know. I think it would be really fun to kind of like start doing story times with you guys, and just for us to get to know each other a little bit better. Alright, but if you have any suggestions or any comments or any questions, go ahead and leave them in the spot that you know to leave them in. The only spot, I mean, what the heck. Anyway, need to like detox. Let's all have a little. That was a lot of information that I was very nonchalant about. Let's just calm down. Just let it go. Alright, but seriously, if you guys have any questions, definitely go ahead and let me know. I'm always here for you guys to answer your questions. Anything that you might want to know regarding the surgery, my experience, I can definitely help, as far as what to expect. So until then, I will see you guys next time, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.